All right, everybody. Today we're going to be discussing the new technology and types of warfare that was occurring during World War One. All right, we talked about the causes, and now we'll talk a little bit about like what was actually happening. So, new technology and warfare. Now, early on, most Germans believed that this war was probably going to be over with by Christmas of 1914. It would be very quick. Well, it wasn't very quick. It took a long time. And it's mainly going to be fought in France, right on the border between Germany and France here, up through Belgium a little bit. But essentially, it's a stalemate right away. And both sides are going to have to dig in. And so it's going to be fought right along here, and very little ground is going to be gained over the 4 years that this war is going to last. So some of the new weapons we've talked about, the men who built America and the factories and the assembly line with Henry Ford. Well, this is going to be the first war where you really see the massive amounts of weapons and new technology being built on a scale no one's ever seen before because of these factories, because of the Industrial Revolution. And weapons are mass produced faster than ever before and more powerful than ever before. One of the weapons that most guys would have had during the war is the bolt action rifle. You could fire a lot of rounds, 15 rounds a minute. That's way up from previous wars we've talked about. And they had a long range. You could kill a person over 800 yards away. Sometimes that was probably a lucky shot, but it was lethal from a long distance. And you had snipers and sniper rifles, and people could be taken out from a long ways away. The old bayonet on there. Flamethrowers were new. But the weapon that really changes this war is the machine gun. All right, it's a much bigger machine gun, heavier machine gun than what you might see on TV today. But it could fire 600 rounds per minute, and it really changes the way this war is fought. You're not just going to be able to charge across a battlefield very easily like we see in the Civil War or Spanish American War because of the machine gun. And we'll see some video footage later on. Trench warfare, machine guns could kill many people quickly. Both sides dug trenches in for protection. And so this becomes a trench warfare. It's protecting you from that machine gun. And we can see kind of the line of trenches here on the Western Front. Here's the line of trenches, remember, where they're fighting Russia as well on the Eastern Front. All right, so trench warfare is what you should think about when you think of World War One. They have all these elaborate trenches throughout here. The Germans tended to have much nicer trenches than the British or French. Now, how do you get to these guys in there? They're going to start firing bombs trying to land them in the trenches. And the trenches became deeper and deeper over the years. 9 out of 10 men survived the trenches, but conditions were pretty bad, pretty terrible. And they usually kind of rotated how things worked, where you might spend 2 weeks in the trenches, then you'd move back and have 2 weeks where it'd be nice and easy, way back beyond the front lines, and then 2 weeks kind of in the middle, running things back and forth, and then 2 weeks in the front again. One of the things that people could suffer from is what they called trench foot, where basically your feet are in the water all the time and they get infected and start to rot away. Over the top, they would blow the whistle, and you jump over the top and charge across no man's land, is what they called that. Blow the whistle over the top. No man's land was the area between two trenches, usually consisted of 50 yards to 250 yards between yourself and the enemy. So over the top, you run up over the top of the trench, run across no man's land, try to get to the other side. Here's a battlefield in France. You can it's overgrown now. When it was no man's land, bombs were bursting there. You had people trampling, across there, but you could actually walk the path from one side to the other and kind of check it out. Have a video link for you later about that. We'll watch a little link here on the Christmas truce. between the Germans and the British. This is also the first war where we see chemical warfare. Mustard gas, chlorine gas, which essentially seeps into your lungs. You choke, fluid fills up your lungs, and you can die from that. It'll burn your skin as well. The problem with this is when it lands, sometimes if the wind changes directions, it could float back at you. But some pretty nasty stuff. And then artillery. These are big cannons that are being used for the first time, and they're firing bombs off, the mortar shells that explode when they hit the ground. Big Bertha was the Germans' largest artillery cannon. And there were different size shells, and there were different barrages. A light barrage was 6 to 7 shells every 10 minutes. A moderate barrage might be 30 shells a minute, and a heavy one might be 50 to 60 shells a minute. And so they just start firing these things off. And then, there might be a long time where it's more of a light barrage, and then, all of a sudden heavy barrages. But they said the veterans in the trenches could kind of tell they could tell how big the shell was coming down based on the sound. It would kind of make that whistling sound like you see in the cartoons and explode. And they could kind of tell by the whistle how big it was. And you just took cover, whatever you could do. But this was that's how they tried to attack the guys in the trenches. And these wars, it stretched on year after year after year. And it became a war of attrition. Who was going to kind of run out of resources first? Some men would go kind of crazy. They called it shell shock. Today we're going to call it post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. But men would go crazy from the violence and basically they called it shell shock. Out on the open seas, as people are trying to cross the Atlantic Ocean, one of the issues were the German U-boats. They were the first to develop submarines, which they called Unterseebooten. And I'll have a link for you a little later on the U-boats. But that made it treacherous, and we're going to see it again in World War II. But very dangerous for American ships to sail across with supplies to get them to our allies. The deadliest battle of the entire war is the Battle of Somme over in France. Basically, it's going to last from July 1st to November 18th of 1916, but most of the casualties are going to occur right away. The British casualties on day one, 57,000 men injured or killed. Their total casualties, 630,000, just fighting in that area. Going over the top, machine gun fire, barbed wire, that type of stuff. Total German casualties, 650,000. So well over 1 million people killed or injured fighting over that small piece of land. This is also the first war where we see pilots going at it. They called these fights up in the air dog fights. Now early on the planes were used for reconnaissance to see where your enemy was at, but then they started to arm the planes and these guys would shoot each other down up there. The most famous pilot was a German named Baron von Richthofen, known as the Red Baron because his plane was red. He shot down over 80 planes. French, British, and American planes. You can see the different spots where he's shooting them down. He was finally shot down at the end in 1918, I believe, and killed. The Red Baron. That's where our pizza comes from. The Zeppelin was also used, which was that airship, kind of like the Hindenburg. The problem was they were very easy to shoot down. But they carried machine guns and bombs that they could drop. Camouflage ships were being used, so they would blend in, and maybe a submarine wouldn't be able to spot them. They would kind of blend in with the waves off in the horizon. Tanks were used for the first time in World War I, but they weren't as effective as World War II. They moved very slowly, 3 miles per hour. They could break down, overheat, that type of thing. But they were used for the first time. The way they got their name was when it was a British operation. It was top secret, and they had them covered up by tarps. And the word on the street was there were water tanks underneath. So that's how the tank got its name. lots of drafted soldiers on both sides, and like I mentioned earlier, war of attrition. To win a war by wearing down your enemy to the point of collapse, forcing them to use up their resources and manpower. Usually the winner is the side with more resources. Now, early on, the United States was not involved. When we join the war, that's going to really tip the balance.